Imagine drinking coffee, listening to cozy lo-fi music, and making indie games from your home office or bedroom as a full-time job. What if there was someone who could show you exactly how you could make this dream a reality? In today's show, I sit down with Tom Francis, who has maintained this game dev dream for over a decade. He's had no outside funding and no publishers, while somehow releasing wildly successful indie games that all came straight from his brilliant mind. Like Gunpoint, Heat Signature, and his latest hit, Tactical Breach Wizards, which won Excellence in Design at IGF this year. You're gonna learn from someone who is honestly doing what so many of you listening dream of doing. So this podcast is honestly the best way for you to learn and hopefully replicate his success. We discuss something called Iterative game design, which honestly is a huge tool that every aspiring game developer should use. We also talk about the future of game dev with AI, whether or not it's a bad time to make games because of the health of the game industry. We wrap up the conversation discussing how to finish your game and why exactly games take so long to make. And as always, I've saved the best part for last. We open up his hit game Tactical Breach Wizards in Unity, and honestly my mind was blown. He and his team created this tool that honestly, you've just got to see the tool to fully grasp its brilliance. And I'll be honest, seeing custom tools in Unity, it used to intimidate me. I didn't know the first thing about how to make them. But did you know that AI tools like Bezi can create editor tools among a ton of other features for your game in just a few seconds? And by the way, Bezi is today's generous sponsor. So here's a little bit about Bezi. Bezi's like having a development partner. And with their new agent mode, it's almost like you're adding another team member. It doesn't just respond to your prompts. It has this full context of your entire project and makes tailored suggestions by searching your assets, your scripts, your scene graph, Unity docs, and even the internet to give you the most accurate help possible. See, with agent mode, you can modify and create code directly in your project through the Bezi app. It speeds up repetitive tasks, helping debug tricky issues, pinpoint performance bottlenecks, and it even tracks every change so you can revert at any time. I've been trying it out on my own projects for a while, and I recently made a full video showing how it quickly helped me fix 4 very real issues I've been meaning to fix in my game Brave Boy. It really shows how powerful Bezi can be and how much time it can save during development. So definitely check it out through the link below. The best thing is that Bezi is completely free to try, and if you like it, you can get 50% off your first month of Pro using the link in the description. You strike me as somebody who's highly intentional with how he makes games. Would you say that's true?
Yeah, with the caveat that I'm also very iterative and experimental. So you try to see if they work and then change. So I think a lot about what I want to do and what I'm trying to achieve. But once I try it, if it doesn't work, then I pivot right away.
The reason I ask that is because me and my wife are building a house right now, and we're working with a builder, and he's very precise about every decision he makes, who he subs out to, and everything has a cost associated with it. And there's a spreadsheet, and he has to do that because he has a client, me, and I don't want him to go over budget, right? And I was thinking, why can't I build games like builders build houses? Why can't I do that? Everything for me is there's so many feelings attached to when I'm making a game. I have to see it and smell it and taste it, touch it to know if it's good. And I wanted to know about you. You strike me as somebody who's very structured with how you make a game. Do you treat making games like a builder builds a house?
No, I think I'm more like you in that it is going to be very experimental and just to kind of see how things feel. But I do go in with a lot of ideas and opinions and things that I want to try. And for example, in Wizards, one of the main features is that you can rewind your turn as many times as you like. So you can undo each little action all the way back to the start of your turn. And there's no limit on doing that. And I had a pretty strong instinct that was going to work out. At least it was going to make a kind of game that I would like. I knew a lot less about whether other people would like that kind of game. But we're always trying to make emergent gameplay, and I've noticed that the thing that stops people getting into that kind of game is the fear of consequences, that they don't feel free to risk trying something because they're worried about what will happen if they do, and that they might mess it up, and a lot of the time they're right. Trying something crazy will mess up. And so if the consequences for that are high, then most people just don't engage with it with experimental gameplay. They don't try the crazy plans. They don't use the weird, interesting abilities. They just stick to like, let's just do some damage and let's just hide behind the cover and then do some more damage. So I knew I wanted to try and remove that stress for the player and try and welcome some more people into the idea of emergent gameplay and to push them to try weird things and crazy strategies. And so removing any risk of consequence was a drastic thing to do. But I had a pretty strong feeling that it would work out. People told me, I'd pitch it to people and they'd say, I think that's going to cause decision paralysis, where like people just never commit their turn because they could try anything. So just spend longer and longer on your turn. And you know, there's an element of that, but I think it didn't really end up being a serious problem. We kept asking people, like, you know, is that happening? And some people spend a long time on turns, but those people are having loads of fun. Like they're happy about that. They're like, this is great. I get, like, if you're enjoying yourself, then you do dig in and you try and find this perfect solution or this amazing, you know, way to get out of a difficult situation. But if you're not enjoying it, we generally found people to just progress. And I was actually surprised at how unperfectionist some people were. Just like, yeah, I took a bit of damage, but I think that's okay. We'll just soldier on and get through it.
So you have to test out every instinct. So you have an instinct as a game designer. Are there some design principles though that you've just figured out are tried and true that you can rely on, or do you have to really iterate and test every little thing for each game?
I guess I don't really have like a lot of global principles that like always apply. But I do, if I do ever hit something like that, you'll see on my YouTube channel, I do a series called Design Talk, where I kind of like pick a sort of design concept and explore that. I guess there are often the most universal things are things not to do. So like snowballing is one of the design talks I did, which is the phenomenon of like, as you, if you're doing really well at a game, it gives you mechanical rewards, like an upgrade to your gun or extra health or whatever. And now the game is easier. And I don't like that as a pattern because the people who are finding the game easiest, it gets easier for them. And the people who are struggling with the game don't get given any advantages, and they're already struggling, so they keep struggling. And so in both cases, it gets worse. So we're pretty strict about trying not to do that. That's why in Wizards, all of these extra missions you can do, they can only unlock cosmetic outfits. They never get you any more experience or any more perk points or anything that mechanical, even though that's a much better sort of carrot to dangle for the player. The player's more excited about that stuff. But if they're really digging deep into the mechanics, they're probably already good at the game, and giving them extra advantages is just going to make the game easier.
Wait, so there's no upgrades?
You upgrade as you go through the campaign, but everyone will get the same amount of experience, the same amount of upgrades. So by the end of the game, your Riot Priest might look different to mine in terms of the upgrades you chose, but we'll both have spent the exact same number of perk points.
So it's something like discouraging wealth disparity in like economics, right? You don't want the wealthier to get wealthier and the poor to get poorer. So as a game designer, there's like an economy almost that you're trying to make available to everybody equally. Is that kind of what you're saying? Yeah.
And it's, I think it makes life better for everybody because the people who are finding the game easy don't want it to get easier. They want more challenge, right? Maybe they don't want it to get massively harder, but if it gets easier, it's going to eventually just become nothing to them. And the people who are struggling probably would like to progress a bit faster and get a bit of help.
So developers listening right now, including me, we shouldn't feel like imposters or we shouldn't feel guilty if we have to feel out our game as we create it. No, that's the way it's done. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's, I think, more than half the job is you've built something, now try it out. You're going to test it internally, see how you feel about it. And if you like it, then you test it externally and see what other people think of it. And in both cases, you're going to get some results you didn't expect and didn't want. And how do you react to that is, I think more than half the job. I think there's like a sort of mythology about like auteur designers that they know how everything's going to be in advance. And they're just so smart that they have everything in their head and they're going to be right about everything. I don't think that exists. And those people will tell you that, or people who idolize those people will say, but you don't want to test too much because you'll round it all down and it'll become nothing. It'll become sort of designed by committee. And like, obviously you could, make something mush by just taking everyone's advice all at once, but that's not what testing does. That's what you do after reading the test feedback. Like you read the test feedback, then you be a designer. That's half the job is, what problems people are having, what they love, what they don't like. And then you figure out, how do we steer around that stuff? How do we navigate around it?
It sounds like a very human process, making a game, right? And everybody's freaking out about AI right now. And there's plenty of justifications, believe me. Can AI make a good game? What do you think? Without human input?
Not right now, I don't think. And I'm not really interested in the games it might make. Or it's just, I think there's always going to be a lot of interest in human-made games, regardless, and human intentionality is part of what we get in our relationship with a game. I think it's even true that even if an AI had made like one of our games, the players would get less out of it knowing that it was made by an AI. Like some of the choices that in Breach Wizards, there are some twists, there are some surprises. Sometimes we do something out of the blue that feels shocking and maybe even unwelcome in the moment. But because we made it, you're waiting to see, where are they going with this? Like, this is surprising. Why would they do this? Someone made this choice to have my character suddenly get shot on screen, and I'm like, you can't do that. Like, what? I'm waiting for, how are you going to get out of this problem you've created? When there's a human behind it, that's this kind of, it's a human relationship. You're kind of in dialogue with the creator, and it's a treat. If you're in the hands of a good creator, this is why I wanted to go back to making a story-driven game after making a procedural game for the last one. Really proud of Heat Signature, and it's really fun to play. But we didn't get to sort of take the reader on the player on a little journey, and I really enjoyed with Gunpoint sort of knowing, at this point the player's going to be feeling this, and I'm going to do this to them, and then they're going to have this experience, and seeing that play out and have people have those experiences. I don't want it to be the same for every player, but I love that. As a player, I love that feeling of being in good hands. You have that with Half-Life 2. Once you've played a bit of Half-Life 2, like, okay, everything that's going to happen is going to be amazing in this game, and I'm in good hands. I can't wait to see what treats they prepared for me next. And I think you need a human at the wheel to have that feeling. Yeah,
I think you're right, man. I think that obviously there's AI tools that help game development, but there is some that I think I talked with Jabril's about the value of human-made games, and I think we even maybe disagreed. But I am curious if there's going to be some kind of human certification where it's like a game gets some kind of stamp that's like, or a badge or something that's like, this is a human-made game,
Yeah.
Because you're right, there's value in that. It's like, what makes something art? In a way, it's basically just like, if you're connecting on another level with a human being through art, then it's art. If there is no connection, you wonder if it's art, or if it's doing what art should do, which it should make you feel like, I don't know, understood. You feel like you're reflected in the art. When I play, like, I love Half-Life 2. It's huge inspiration for me. When I play that game, it feels like someone understands me,
Yeah.
And I think that if games start to feel less human, we won't feel like we're connected, and it just won't be valuable. It won't be fun. So I think you're right.
Yeah, I don't think human-made games are going away. I think we'll always want that connection, and we'll always value it. And yeah, intentionality is very important. It comes back to what I was saying about testing. If you did just test a lot and then you had an AI just react to that feedback and try and implement all the changes that people are asking for, you probably would get generic slop that would be rounding off all the interesting corners, and there'd be no intentionality in the final result. And that is what a game designer's job is you are going to be intentional in how you react to that feedback. You don't just do what everyone asks for. You can't, for one thing, because they're going to ask for conflicting things. Yeah. But when that happens, you're making these decisions about, no, this matters to me. I'm going to make it this way. And the fraction of people who don't like that, I'm going to do something to try and make it more palatable to them. And I don't want them to be frustrated or put off. But ultimately, this is the game we're making, and it's not this other game.
Well, let's talk really quickly here about where the industry is going, because it's something I'm really interested in. Because when was your first game? It was like
2013 it came out.
Yeah, so you've been around for a long time. I mean, that's when I've been making games since like 2010, and so we've both been kind of around all the way basically until where it was the beginning of this big indie game boom and kind of the end of the Flash era. But you were also in game journalism. Am I correct there?
Yeah.
Okay. So you've seen the journalism side of the game industry, which is no small thing, because that's a whole industry in and of itself that seems like it's dying. I want to talk to you about that. But also, it seems like the game industry itself is going through this weird metamorphosis, and I don't quite fully understand it. Lots of studios are laying off employees. The tech industry is struggling because of AI. You had a bunch of stuff going on with Embracer last year or the year prior, funding issues, publishers closing doors, publishers dropping projects, and even my own project, Twisted Tower, having budget cuts. All that said, with your level of expertise, let's first start with, what do you feel is going to happen with game journalism? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I don't have like an expert opinion on the sort of industry and the economics of it, because I left game journalism when my game when Gunpoint came out in 2013, and even when I worked there, I very consciously avoided ever being in charge of anything. I was like, I loved writing about games and I wanted to keep doing that, so I was doing it 9 years, and I changed job titles a couple of times, but I hit a ceiling where I'm like, I can't go any higher, or I'll be managing people instead of writing. But obviously I had close contact with the editor of the magazine who's has to figure out how to make each issue sell. And I started in the magazine era. We were selling a magazine for £6.
That's PC Gamer.
Yeah, and when I started, we didn't have a website. Like there had been a PC Gamer website, then it was shut down, and then for a while we had a little corner of computerandvideogames.com that was PC Gamer branded, and we got to do a little blog there, and that was it. And it was a while before PCGamer.com became a proper thing. So it was all magazine. That was a much simpler thing because you're selling something, and just like, we write the words and people buy it for £6, and that is sufficient for us to pay staff and have it's quite a healthy model. Like it's very old fashioned now. And then the website was a huge success, and it was a big extra income stream for us. We were using a lot of the same content. We were writing stuff especially for the website, but for a while a lot of stuff was just going from the magazine to the website. And it was a huge success popularity wise. But then as the world and the industry and PC Gamer shifted to being just online only, I didn't have to manage this stuff, so I don't know all the ins and outs, but the impression I get from all my games journalist friends is that it's just really fucking hard to run a business on advertising when the stuff you're writing is, people are consuming it so casually. News especially, like you just get news from wherever you get news, and if the news sites start saying you can't read this article until you pay us $5, then you just say, I get my news from somewhere else. Like the attachment is so low there.
Yeah.
That it's very hard to make money from it. So the stuff that seems hopeful to me is when you have a consistent voice and you have great writers and you have an audience that trusts you and cares about your writing and likes the writing itself, then having a way for them to support you, like the Rock Paper Shotgun supporters program, 99% of their stuff is free, and there's a supporters program where you can pay them every month, and the only thing you get access to is sort of one post. I can't remember what the frequency is, but it's a very tiny percentage of the content, and people aren't really paying for that. They're just paying to support.
Yeah.
That's a good model. It isn't, I have to say, I'm not saying, why doesn't everyone just use that as their funding model? Because it doesn't scale. Like it doesn't.
That's what I was about to say.
Want to give money.
Yeah. Dude, does that mean that getting articles written about your game isn't very important anymore?
I mean, I think it's less important. Definitely when I started in 2013, to promote that game, that was the peak of my press contacts and the peak of press importance in terms of like getting a preview or a review was kind of everything. And streamers existed, but they weren't sort of seen as like the primary way of getting the word out. Whereas these days, I feel like streamers are sort of more important than... by streamers, I mean content creators, I guess, like people who make videos of games, whether that's live or not. They seem like, definitely a bigger audience. And getting your stuff in front of them is more important. I still think press is important, and I care about it anyway, even if it wasn't crucial to success. I really want to know what critics thought of my game, and I want that score to be good. Like it matters to me, partly because I was a reviewer, and I know that it's more meaningful than some people would assume. When you give a score, you put a lot of thought into it, and it matters. And if
is that true with every writer?
No, probably not every writer.
Yeah.
But I will say in general, like being on the inside of the games journalism industry, like almost everybody is in it for the love of games, and they care deeply about what they write, and the idea that they're inflating a score to appease somebody was just kind of ridiculous. Certainly in the places I had direct experience of with PC Gamer mostly. That would just never happen. It would just like you're doing it for because you care about games. It's very badly paid. You're not doing it for the money.
Yeah. So did you do you feel like the game industry is healthy right now?
No.
I love how you immediately start laughing.
Yeah, it's weird because our company has been unaffected by anything really. In the last, we weren't affected by the pandemic. We weren't affected by the recent spate of layoffs, the sort of funding freeze or whatever we're calling this kind of period, the indie apocalypse. We've just sort of been standing through it all and unaffected, mostly because of we got lucky early on, releasing a game in 2013, perfect time to do it. The money from that completely funded the next game. The money from both of those completely funded the third game, and hopefully that'll carry on. So when purse strings are being tightened in the industry at large and people are getting laid off and people can't find funding, it hasn't affected us at all. And it feels sometimes like, you wake up and there's been a hurricane and your house is absolutely fine and everything else is in tatters. And you're like, oh my God, what happened? And like, why are we okay? But I know very little about the, how it all works and what the causes are behind the ongoing onslaught of layoffs and studio closures and everything. But it is weird to be in this isolated bubble of like, so far we're fine. I mean, maybe I'm speaking too soon. Maybe something's gonna screw us. But we have enough money to make the next game, and so it doesn't really matter how tight the purse strings get on other people, which is a position of huge privilege. Yeah. And that was getting lucky very early on, and then staying small. We never really grew. Like Gunpoint was 6 people, and our last game was 5 people. So
wow, tiny.
It's a bit of a false comparison because some of the people on Gunpoint were they contributed one thing at the start of the project and then weren't ongoing contributors necessarily, whereas the Wizards people were much closer to full time.
I think the difference between my studio and yours at this present moment is my studio, we had funding from funding sources. Yeah. And you never really know where it came from.
Yeah.
Because it's like 3D Realms, my publisher, went through, and this is like all public, so it's not like it's a secret. They got bought or they got sold or something, but Embracer was involved and then they weren't involved. And then money from, I think, Saudi Arabia was going to Embracer. So it's like all these different places that money was coming from, billions of dollars just flying all over the place, all over the world, based on essentially speculation that the game industry is going to be continually infinitely profitable like it was during COVID. And then when it wasn't, everyone freaked out. It's almost like the stock market. I mean, that's kind of how it feels. It's all this super speculative, and people started freaking out because other people were freaking out when maybe they didn't even need to freak out. Your studio, and I'm, by the way, I'm grateful for 3D Realms, and they've funded the project. It's published by 3D Realms, and they funded a huge chunk of the beginning of the production. So super grateful to them, and we're going to finish strong. But the difference is with your studio is, and this is one of my questions I've written down, you've never taken money from a publisher?
Nope. Haven't taken money from anyone. No, all completely self-funded. The first game we made in our spare time, so it didn't cost anything, in terms of actual resources. Obviously, it cost our time, but I didn't have to quit my job or anything to do that. I did take 3 months off from my job towards the end when it was really getting towards the finish line, and I thought a push could finish it. But if the game had not been successful, I could have returned to the job after that. That was I made sure that I wasn't giving anything up. It's like the least rock and roll story ever. I was like, didn't take any risks. I was like, even though everyone's telling me this game's going to do well and everything, I'm not going to quit my job to finish it. I'm going to make sure I can come back to my job if it doesn't sell, or if something goes wrong. So I was very, very careful. And then just so lucky that first game did so well, and it was just the right time, because for a first project, very hard to pick something that's going to stay within your scope that you can actually feasibly do. Like I say, I was doing all the programming back then, so I was doing a bigger share of the work back then than I am now. If I'd picked something even slightly bigger, or the concept had been harder to implement, or anything like that, then probably never would have finished it, or would have dragged on, or had to cut it back and then made it just not quite interesting enough. There's that threshold of like interestingness where you're going to get attention, and that was so much lower back then in 2013, as I'm sure you know.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Standing out now is so much higher. We could release Gunpoint as our first game today, and I think no one would notice.
Dude, I think a lot of people are trying to stand out these days, and the way that they're trying to stand out is making them not stand out. So what I mean is, like, everybody's trying to make some weird twist on a genre. And to me, it's getting kind of annoying, because it's like, yeah, it's interesting, but like putting frosting on pizza is interesting.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean it tastes good. And it just seems like it's happening so much. It's like, it's a twist on Vampire Survivor, it's a twist on this, or it's a twist on that. And what I've done, and we'll see if it pays off. I have no idea if it pays off. But what I've done in the last 3-4 years of my time is I'm like, I just want to make a genre, a game that's pretty much already defined, and I just want to do it again and just give people more of what they already know. And that's what I'm doing with Twisted Tower, with like this BioShock. It's like, it's just like, it's BioShock, but in like a Disney park. And I'm like, if there's nothing really unique there, and a lot of people might say, well, I'll just play BioShock then. But my suspicion is, and I could be wrong, my suspicion is people are going to say, I actually do want to play BioShock again in a different environment, you know, and with a different story,
Something's like Underserved, I think that could work really well. Like Stardew Valley was obviously sort of hitting the Animal Crossing vibes that PC players weren't getting. And I can't speak to that game or the comparison between those two, but it really felt like people were just crying out for that kind of game. And obviously it's a great one, but its success is phenomenal, and I think shows you how many people wanted that. And then with SimCity and City Skylines, we kind of saw like SimCity fans weren't getting what they wanted from main SimCity, and then City Skylines came along, and they all flocked to that because it was doing what they wanted.
Yeah, and it didn't really do anything new.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't played the two well enough to comment on that, but that was the impression I got. Is people wanted a good SimCity, and it was a good SimCity.
Dude, when I was in second grade, I remember specifically second grade, my teacher said, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I wanted to be a painter. And the reason why is because I was like, my mom or something had showed me a bunch of paintings from Norman Rockwell, and his paintings were so good. They were so, I was like, how does somebody draw this good? And then I found out like 2 years ago that what he would do is he would take pictures and then he would paint over top of an actual human form. And I'm saying all this because I'm saying, I think a lot of game developers feel like Tom Francis is a genius and he's coming up with all of this on his own from scratch, when in reality, I think what you're saying is it's totally fine to just fully understand a game that's already been successful and do it again, but with your own spin.
Yeah, I think for me anyway, that the spin part is quite important. I want to be making it for a reason, and to explore something like, I bet if this game had this feature, you could maybe say Breach Wizards is like Into the Breach, but with infinite rewind. And that wasn't how we started it. But that's an interesting thing to explore. Does that work? For me anyway, I find when I start building something, I end up making a bunch of decisions differently to whatever reference point I'm going by anyway. Gunpoint was supposed to be a 2D Deus Ex when I started it. I was like, I know I can't make that, but let's go in that direction. Just see
that sounds so fun though.
Yeah, and I took the principles of Deus Ex about subverting your environment and turning it to your side, and that became the hacking mechanic in Gunpoint, and that what I ended up with was a puzzle game, which is not Deus Ex, but that was me sort of trying to see what I could distill out of Deus Ex and think, okay, subverting your environment is cool. What's like the most global kind of subverting you could do? And then once I built that, it was like, oh, this is a puzzle game. This is a mechanic for solving puzzles. So I got to build some puzzles now. And that became that. So I find things drift a lot. Like even if I start with a reference point, I end up making things differently. And then it's, the uniqueness part is kind of covered.
So you're not being experimental, or because there was a quote that you said in one of your videos. You said, don't be experimental about structure in a game unless that's the point.
Yes.
Is that related to what you're saying here? Like, at what point is it a good idea for a game developer or a game designer to start twisting and changing things and being experimental?
Yeah. Like I say, I like to go in with an idea of what I'm going to do differently. And yeah, it's definitely possible to go too far in that direction and just be like changing everything all the time, especially like pivoting, like changing your mind about, okay, we built all this, now we're going to throw all that away and do it this way. If you have to do that because feedback is telling you it's not working, then fine. But I think some developers sort of lose themselves in their own head and lose faith in something before they've even tried it, and then keep changing their mind about what they want to make, and that's very time consuming. So yeah, the structure comment was came from heat signature, because with heat signature, we build the core game first, which I think is the right way to do it. Make sure you've got something fun at the core of it, but there was no structure surrounding it. And then when I came to build that, I wanted it to be like a whole galaxy of space stations, and each one is divided into territory, and there'd be these ships flying between the space stations, and you'd hijack those, and that would change the trade routes, and you could sort of modify the infrastructure of the galaxy by how you did that, and create new trade routes and create new empires and things. And it's all very ambitious. And being ambitious is okay as long as you can test what you're trying to build quickly. And when it's the structure surrounding the whole game, A, it took a long time to build anything at all to test. And then B, testing it is also really time consuming, because you have to play. This is a theory about how it will feel to play a whole campaign within that structure. And so to test that once, you've got to play a whole campaign. Like, there isn't really a shortcut for it.
Yep.
And that could be, in heat signature, it's probably like 20 hours to kind of complete the game. So it's just not practical to test that yourself dozens of times. So generally, yeah, you don't want to be experimental about the whole structure of the game, because you won't be able to test it very often. And I added the caveat, unless that's the point of the game. If the core is very, tried and tested, and all you're interested in is experimenting with structure, which is kind of true of our next game, then I think it's okay. I hope it's okay.
Yeah.
We're still going to have the testing problem of like, I won't be able to test how this campaign feels, over and over again. I'm going to have to rely on external testers for that. And we'll need a lot of them, because, when you ask 100 people to test the game, not all of them are going to be willing to play through a 20-hour campaign or whatever it ends up being. Even the ones who want to just won't get to do that in a decent amount of time. So you need a good body of testers. I think we have that now. Like, we've been building a mailing list my whole career, basically. And we always send test builds to those folks first, and we get a good response. So hopefully we'll have enough people to help.
What's your sample size when you're doing alpha testing or beta testing?
I like to get like 1,000 or 2,000 people in on a test eventually.
That's crazy. I'll do like 20 people. Because I'm afraid that, like you said earlier, I'm afraid I'll take way too much feedback,
right,
and change what my instincts are.
Your early tests, I think, makes sense to keep them small, because at that point you probably want to read every word that people say about it and think about it carefully. When I do that, I do it with developer friends and folks who I know I agree with their opinions in general, and I know if they suggest something that there's something behind it. But when you're doing it with the public in general, you don't know anything about the people who are giving you test feedback. Like each individual data point could be meaningless, could be completely antithetical to what you want to make. And so if you have a small sample set and one of them, even two of them are saying the same thing, it feels like, oh my God, we've got to do what they're saying, or like that must be how everyone's going to feel. And actually it might be two really anomalous data points. So yeah, we tend to roll out, with Wizards especially, we did it in waves. So the first, we'd probably send keys to like 500 people first, and then just wait and see if they hit like a game-breaking crash and just anything major in those first couple of days. And then if that seems okay, then we send out like 1,000. Because we want people to fill in a feedback form when they're done. And I find sort of 10 to 20% of testers will actually do that. So if you want 100 data points, then you need 1,000 testers. Yeah. And with Wizards, we also had tons of other like feedback stuff in it. So there's analytics where we passively track, how many times people are dying on a level, how many times they're hitting the rewind button, how long in time it's taking them, how long in turns it's taking them. And that's really interesting too, because you can then look at how much time per turn are they taking on a level. And that'll tell you how thinky it is. That they only took 4 turns, but they all spent half an hour on it. Like they really thought about those turns.
So would you say that a low sample size with a quality testers? So for example, like a group of 12 advisors who are game developers, that's valuable for telling you like what's really good about your game, what's really fun about the game, what works, what doesn't, whether the story works, whether it doesn't. But a larger group, a larger sample size, that's more for like giving you feedback on balance and bugs. Yeah. Is that true?
I also use the large sample size for, we always ask what's your favorite thing about the game, or what's the worst thing about the game.
Okay.
And having those in 2 separate columns is really nice because you can just read all the good stuff at once if you want to. And then when you're ready for the bad stuff, you can do that. I also ask them to rate it out of 10. No matter how early we are, I just want to score out of 10, just gut feeling. What do you think? So that gives us an overall scorecard for how we're doing.
Has that been a good mirror image of the actual data you get from Steam?
Yeah, I think it has actually. You couldn't sort of translate it directly, but the thing I think it's useful for mainly is how did we do relative to the last beta? Because
got it.
We can tell if we're moving in the right direction. Only once did it ever go down, and that was a real depressing beta round. I knew exactly why. I knew what the problem was, and it was quite easy to fix. But it was a year after our previous beta, and we got a lower overall score than the last one. And I was like, oh god, we just spent a year making the game worse.
Do you get just really sick and nervous when you read reviews, or I'm sorry, beta testing reviews? Is it a hard week?
I'm very thin-skinned, so what I do is obviously I can dip into the what's the best thing about the game responses. I'll read a bunch of those and just get a feel for where we're going. Maybe the overall impressions answer. Definitely the score I can look at right away, and I'm excited to see what that is. But then reading their negative feedback is pretty rough. So what I'll usually do is I'll get my team on a call and we'll read it together so that it just becomes a social thing. And sometimes if someone's really savage, we're all just kind of laughing at it. Because, oh my God, this guy didn't like the combat, the writing, the art. Just trash the whole thing. And
I don't drink before noon, but when I'm doing beta testing and alpha testing, I'll find myself I'll have a glass of whiskey and I'll be like, okay, here we go. Yeah. So with Tactical Breach Wizards, you are currently looking at 9,000 reviews.
Wow.
And you're sitting at 98%. Now,
that's great.
First off, congratulations. That's insane. That's absolutely insane. I think the highest I've ever gotten was, let's see here. What is Pinstripe at? And not nearly as many reviews, but let's see here. 89% for that game. And then Twisted Tower, the Twisted Tower demo is currently sitting at 90%.
Nice.
So, but then the recent reviews, for some reason, they're at 84%. No idea why. I'm not going to worry about it right now. But the question is, why are you missing those 2 percentage points? What do you think?
I don't know, because I've never read the negative reviews. My mom has read them. My friend, some of my team have read them, I think, and some of my friends have dug into them. But I'm honestly, when you're at 90%, you don't really care what the 2% are. It's just we can live with those. If I try and cater to them, I'm probably going to lose some of the 98.
That's right. It's just people, I think is there any game on Steam that's 100%? That's a really important question. I don't even know if it's possible.
With a small enough review count. Yeah. My friend Greg Lobanov, who worked on...
he was on this podcast.
Beastie Ball, right. They were at 100% for quite a long time. He was tweeting saying, why are there no negative reviews? Please someone leave a negative review, because he was genuinely wanted to hear about problems. But I would never have dared to do that. If I was at 100%, I would shut the fuck up about it. But no, I'm surprised that the negative isn't bigger, because if for no other reason than it's a comedy game, and comedy is very subjective, right? People have very different senses of humor. I would bet any given stand-up special on Netflix, if you showed it to 100 people, probably 30 of them would dislike it, right? At least.
Yeah, sure.
Because senses of humor are so different. When I watch a Netflix special, I give it sort of 85% chance I'm not going to like it.
Yeah, for sure.
So I think we got lucky. I did try and make sure that the game didn't hinge on the jokes. Like, you don't, if the joke isn't funny, it should be doing something else. In case someone doesn't find this funny, this at least establishes character, or it sets up some narrative thing, and or it just doesn't get in the way. It doesn't feel like we spend a lot of time getting to this joke and then it falls flat. But yeah, I'm still surprised that there weren't more people just put off by it, because, people have so many hang-ups around this stuff.
I've got young people in my life, nieces, nephews, kids of friends, and they want to make games. They want to do what you're doing. They want to do what I'm doing, but you're killing it. You're just crushing it. And I also am really impressed by you because you haven't taken outside funding. And so you figured out how to completely do this from scratch. And that's super duper impressive. So what do you tell these people, these young people? What's the plan? What's the framework? How do you land where you've landed?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing to say is to manage expectations. The thing I did worked in 2013 and probably wouldn't work today. It's much harder today to do what I did, which is start something in your spare time, mess around with it. At the time, I needed artists and composers. I put out a little video of it and showed what I had and said, hey, does anyone want to work on this with me? But it might be free. We might not charge for it. So wasn't offering any money, but if we did charge for it, we'd do revenue share, and just don't risk anything was my strategy. Just let's experiment and see where we're going. It can be risky to go into it with teammates. If you decide a 5 of us are going to make a game together, I think that there's so much that can go wrong there. If that's how you start, I think
what can go wrong?
People having different ideas about what the game's going to be, people being unreliable, might be great friends with someone and that they make music or whatever, and then only once the project starts do you realize, oh God, working with this person is hell. They keep changing their mind, they keep throwing their work away. A healthy professional relationship with someone who's also talented at something you're not talented at is very rare to find, I think. And you like working with them and you still like being friends with them and all of that. I'm very lucky to have found those people. When I started, it was to find out, can I do game design? I've been a critic for a while, and I've been trying to suppress the armchair game designer in me when I'm reviewing stuff. I'm like, okay, my job is to say whether this game is good or not and why. There's a part of me that wants to say what they should have done instead. I don't see why they didn't do it this way. Why isn't there a mini map in this? Why can't you load an early save in this? And I had all these ideas and theories and wanted to put them to the test, but I knew I couldn't judge myself unless I built something. So I had to learn programming to do that. I didn't want to be a programmer particularly. I just had to learn what I needed to learn to build something. And I think I'd advise anyone to do that, even if you're an artist and you want to be an artist, learn enough that you can build something. It doesn't have to be GameMaker or Unity. You could do a Twine game or something. But there are so many different tool sets out there that you can mess around with that have good tutorials, and you don't need to build something. You don't need to build a good game to test whether you can make good art for it or a writer. I know a lot of writers who would like to be writing for games, but haven't had an experience doing it. And I think you just got to make something of your own. And then you'll find out whether you like doing that. And having those skills is going to be useful anyway. Our programmer, John Winder, one of the reasons that he was appealing to me even on paper before I met him and tried working with him is that he had made a jam game. He'd actually won the game Jam with this jam game Flourish. And just knowing he'd been through the whole thing from start to finish was very reassuring of okay, this person is going to know that when you're making games, sometimes you have to take shortcuts. Sometimes you have to, he's going to have a practical mindset about it. And so that's great. I think anyone who, if you're looking to get a job at an existing studio, they are going to love that you've made something that they can play and that you've been through the whole thing. This just gives you a bit of peace of mind about a candidate, that they know what making a game is like, even if it's a very small and simple thing. And then, doing that is going to teach you what you have on your hands. Have I made something that stands out? Have I made something that I'm proud of? Are my friends excited about it? If they are excited about it, then show it publicly, show it publicly either way, I think, and see if the public get any attention. I obviously had a big head start in this as well, because being a games journalist, all my friends not only were into games, but also had a good handle on the industry and what's out there. And so when they told me this is something interesting, I think you should charge money for this, I could believe them and take it seriously, because meant something. I knew that, like, okay, they're my friends and they'd be nice to me, but they wouldn't be this nice out of politeness. Like, for them to say that as a games journalist means something.
Yeah.
But anything, if you make anything that excites your friends, I think that's a good sign. Yeah, who was I listening to the other day who was talking about their very first game? Oh, it was the person who made The Root Trees Are Dead. They'd made a bunch of games that didn't really go anywhere as part of game jams. And when they started showing The Root Trees Are Dead to people, like, people would get addicted to it. They would just lose themselves in it, and he'd never seen that before. And so that was when he knew he had something that he could, make something of. And I think that's a really good approach. Just,
Would you finish a game if you didn't get a good response from your friends or your local circle?
Probably not. A few times I've started on an idea and shown it to people and just not got the enthusiasm that I hoped for. And what I find is that it kills my own enthusiasm. Like, part of my enthusiasm is not just that I want to make this for myself, although I do. It's that I think people will be excited by this. And then when I find out they're not going to be excited by it, then I'm like, oh, okay, never mind.
Yeah.
You've got to be pretty flexible with that stuff. There's some things I did, there's an aspect of this next game that I pitched to some friends, and it didn't get quite as positive a response as I thought it would, or as I hoped. And they had some very fair issues with it, and I rethought it in response to their issues. And they liked the new version better, but I still didn't necessarily walk away with like the boost of enthusiasm that I want to get from showing people. But with this idea in particular, I found myself still really fixated on it. It's a fairly like complicated thing. It's a little bit hard to pitch, so I'm not too put off that people haven't quite seen it yet. I haven't built anything really yet, so that's the main thing, is I'm just pitching the idea. So there could be something wrong with the pitch, and I really want to go further with it and build enough that we can do, ideally a prototype, but if not, like a mock-up trailer where we could show, like, here's what we would show if we had the game, and see if that excites you.
If something's hard to pitch, doesn't that mean that it's potentially a bad idea?
Yeah. And I think that's another thing to say to people who are starting out is if you pitch your idea to people and they don't get it, then that might be a red flag.
Yeah.
I'm hoping I've been through the process enough times now to sort of tell the difference between the pitch. I mean, I've pitched it again since these revisions to new people. I pitched it a lot at GDC to friends, and I got a really good response then. And it's got a title that we're not announcing yet, but sometimes when I say a title for people, they're like, "Oh yeah, awesome!" That was the Tactical Breach Wizards, Secret Weapon was the only title we've ever done where people like get kind of what the game is from the title.
Just from the title, yeah.
Some people are just sold right away. This next title is not going to be as good as that. I can pretty much guarantee that. But it was just a question of like, is there anything we can convey with a title? Because titles are very difficult, and most titles do not convey anything at all.
I kind of feel like people listening right now, this is just my opinion, I feel like they should be weary of trying to prove an idea without at first trying to flesh it out. Because I don't know, like, I used to be an advocate for, if your game doesn't make sense in a sentence, you probably shouldn't do it. But I tried out my own advice on my own games. I made a game about it's like a game where you play as a dog and you have a sword and you can go and unite different breeds of dogs and do like basically medieval warfare as dogs. And you can unite. It's a great idea. I really do. I think it's a great idea. But, and I thought I executed it well. I really went for it and nobody cared. Yeah. I launched the demo and people were like, And the opposite seemed to happen with my other game, Twisted Tower, where it's like, it's story driven. There's not a really unique loop. There's not really a unique mechanic, but people are just really interested in the story and the atmosphere.
Right.
And the execution is what made it work.
Yeah.
Not the idea. So you never really know.
Once you can show something, I think vibes and art become a big part of the pitch. Like, like if you asked me to market Gone Home, I would have been like, oh, fucking hell, this is going to be impossible. Because the best thing about it is like a twist, basically, and almost everything you can say about it would be a spoiler. And but it sold really well, and people were really into it because the vibe was captivating. And I think I know you had Dan on here, and Inscription is kind of the masterclass in that. I feel like without knowing hardly anything about it, if you just see a clip of playing that game across the table from this foresty creature in a dark and spooky cabin, you're just sold on that game. You're just like, yeah, I want to play this. I don't need to know if it does anything clever with mechanics. And of course, Dan had a similar problem where a lot of what makes that game unique would be a huge spoiler to show anybody. So,
exactly.
But it succeeded anyway because the vibes are so good up front.
Yeah, I used to say the idea is everything, but I don't know if that's true. I think it's. I've been very fascinated by two things. I'm curious what your thoughts are here. I do wonder if setting is way more valuable than people realize. Having a really strong setting for your game can potentially carry the player through mediocre gameplay.
Yeah,
as long as
what
the
are your
settings are
examples
great.
of like great settings?
Well, I could definitely do it with films. Films are easy to do. I'm trying to think about. I would say that the BioShock universe is its foundation is setting.
Yeah.
But when it comes to films, The Shining is a great example. Stanley Kubrick's The Shining, where it's like, and even Stephen King, the book, it's like the essence of what makes that story so good is that you're in a hotel, locked up. It's surrounded by a blizzard. It's an empty hotel, completely empty. Backrooms games their foundation is the setting. Completely liminal, completely empty yellow hallways.
Yeah, I guess a lot of horror is like that, where the setting is going to sell it.
Yeah. So I guess my point saying all that is like, it's not as simple as you have a really cool hook or you have a really good, clever mechanic. There's so much that goes into making a great game. And so I'm curious if you agree that you shouldn't just, especially as a new time game developer, you shouldn't just abandon an idea because your friends don't get it just yet. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, it depends how much you believe in it and how, what that's based on, I guess. I think you should be wary of getting too precious about your ideas. If you have like one idea, some people, I think, cling to their first idea because they're scared they'll never have another one. And it's like, well, if this isn't good, then I have nothing. And I think try and reject that fear and just like consider new ideas, that brainstorm new things and throw stuff around and be adventurous, because you'll never get anywhere really as a designer if you're clinging to your ideas that way. Even if you're working alone, that's a bad thing, but it's especially a bad thing if you're working with other people, because then you get like ego about it, and if they're attacking your idea, they're attacking you, and a lot of conflict comes from that, I think.
Do you still struggle with that?
I have to say I don't really have to deal with it too much because I'm a bit of a design overlord. I don't. With Wizards, we worked with Steve Lee, who's a level designer, so there was design collaboration there. But he came on when the game was already figured out, and in fact, that's one of the things that struck him about the game was like, this game's already figured out.
Yeah.
So we had a lot of back and forth about individual mechanics and level design. But when I'm coming up with the game in the early stages, I'm usually the only designer, and I run all the stuff by the team, and if I have people on board at that point, and I want their thoughts, but no one else is trying to be a designer. They don't want to be designers. They don't push back. It does mean every now and then when they do push back about something, then I know to listen to them really carefully because like, okay, my programmer,
yeah.
They don't speak up very much on design stuff. So if they're telling me this is a bad idea, it's probably serious.
Yeah, I think being humble is like, oh man, it's like it's the core of making a game, because if you're not humble, you're not going to iterate effectively. You're not going to be willing to change these ideas that you were so sure about, But also there's another side of being a game developer where you have to be like almost ignorantly confident and just blaze through any insecurity and put yourself out there, It's this weird, I've always felt like I'm like kind of like two different personalities. On one end, I'm incredibly humble. It doesn't sound like I'm humble, but I am. I'm incredibly humble on one side, which is like, tell me what's wrong with this game. Like, please. And I'll have people test it, and I'll be incredibly insecure about it and always looking for those, nitty gritty problems that people are finding. But my other side of me is like, this is the greatest game ever. It's worth 3-4 years of my time, and my savings to make this thing, So you're just two different personalities.
There's a great Penny Arcade strip that I think sums up the creative feedback process, where I think Gabe was making like a tabletop game at the time, and he's saying, look, I've given this to you for brutal, honest feedback. Please don't hold back. Give it to me straight. I need to hear this. No wrong answers. Everything is welcome. And then the last panel is just him saying, "Who the fuck do you think you are? What have you made?"
I know, it's so true.
I have to admit that there's a little bit of that voice in me sometimes when I read feedback.
I think there has
what do you know?
Yeah. I mean, so you're funding the projects, right?
Yeah.
You personally.
Well, the company, yeah. The company gets the money, and then I own the company fully, so I can take money out of that,
So you've got to be kind of a psycho to be willing to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on a project, if not millions. You know?
You do start to think that way at the start of each project of like, okay, this much money in the bank. If I keep that money, I'm really rich. If we make a game, I'm not rich, but we have good runway for the game.
That's right.
But luckily, I don't have to make that decision. You work with what you've got, and that's runway for Wizards. We had a really good amount of money in the bank. It cost a lot of money. Well, not in the grand scheme of things, but we got the funds were starting to dwindle to the point of like, I need to just be a bit more careful about about big expenditures. Didn't have to sweat the small stuff still. And really, but at the time we finished, we still had plenty in the bank. But I'm very, very cautious about this stuff. I want to be sure, because I know how bad I am at estimating how long a game will take. We need to be able to take 4 times as long as I think and still be okay.
Isn't that true? Let's end with that question, and then let's wrap up here. Why is it that games do that? This is a sincere question, because I have friends locally who are like, they own construction companies, or they're builders, or they're engineers. And they kind of look at me like I'm an idiot. They're like, when's the game going to get done? And I'm like, maybe October. And then 2 weeks later, they'll say, "Are you still going to hit that deadline?" And I'm like, no. I added another quarter to the schedule.
Yeah.
And they look at me like I'm like ADD, or I can't control myself. And I'm like, no, guys, like, this is how it is in this industry in particular. This is how it is. Why do you think that's how it is? Why is that a universal truth?
My best guess is that games are one of the only mediums where you are deciding on the very structure of the thing, the very like format of the thing. 2 films can be very different, but they're both going to be some film that plays between 90 minutes and 180 minutes. And it's going to be in 2 dimensions. And there's going to be, usually if it's live action, there's going to be actors on screen, and they're going to be in sets, and there might be some CGI.
And the audience doesn't have an input. They can't change it.
Yeah, the audience are going to sit there or leave. It's the only 2 things they can do.
Right.
Whereas games, not only do games in general have player input, and players can have very different experiences, but each game we make, although we work within genres, we still make bigger changes to those genres than a film makes to its format. We call them genres, but it's not thriller, action, romance. It's like first person perspective, third person perspective, strategy, action. How time flows is different from game to game. In Wizards, we changed our mind about how time flows several times. And it's like, that's hard to predict how long it's going to take, because you don't know what's going to feel right for your game. So we are kind of like, we're making worlds and changing the rules of those worlds in these huge ways that can have consequences on how the player feels. And how the player feels is much more hooked into what you're building, to every nuance of it, where a film can wash over you, and you can enjoy a film that's maybe not your preferred genre, or has some bits that kind of are boring. And in a game, it's boring, and I've got to do something. Like, you hit a bit that's horrible to play, you don't get past it. That's just the end of your experience. So it's so much more sensitive to people having a bad time with it, that we have to be really careful with.
Let's go ahead and try and present your screen. There's a button down there that says present. Okay, so this is Tactical Breach Wizards, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's go. Wow, what am I looking at?
So this is a sort of custom inspector for our stage list, which kind of holds the whole structure of the game. So pretty early on, we really realized we needed a different kind of thing to a scene. Our game has Unity scenes, and then it has data on disk, and a stage is basically a pairing of those 2 things. So this is a gameplay stage. This is the intro mission of the game. And in the configuration of it, there's the mission here is determining where it's going to find the information about the actual level layout. Uh-huh. And then the scene here is what you'll actually see. This is a piece of art, basically, that is pre-made. And throughout the game, we reuse background scenes a lot. But obviously each mission is unique levels, so we're loading different data into the same Unity scene.
Can I have you explain this one more time?
Sure.
Honestly, I'm sitting here, I'm like, it's a custom scene manager kind of thing?
Yeah. So it's the stage list, and each entry here is a stage. And
what do you mean by stage?
They are a custom thing we created that pairs a scene to some data. So in the case of this title card, the first title card we have, the scene is incredibly simple. It's just a black screen, basically. And then the data tells it what title to show. So it will be like a prefab. If I edit it, it's going to link to this prefab. So this is really the important data. It's just there's a scene and there's text prefab, and it's going to load this bit of art into the scene that already exists. And for title cards, that doesn't make a lot of sense. We could have just made individual scenes, but for gameplay, it makes a lot of sense because we have a ton of missions with all the same scene, but different level data.
So this is just a scriptable object.
Yeah, that's right.
Stage list, scriptable object. Gotcha.
Yeah, and each stage is a scriptable object as well.
How long did it take you guys to build this custom scriptable object? I'm sure you can't remember, but maybe like a rough estimate.
Yeah, so this is all our programmer, John Winder's department. I do some programming, but he's our sort of lead programmer. And this was something he kind of built as we went along. So the first version of it was very basic. I think it was just for gameplay. So just pair the gameplay scene to the name of the folder that will have all the level files on disk. And then it became really useful as it went along, as the game became more of a fusion of dialogue scenes and gameplay scenes and title scenes and mission end screens, to kind of make it more flexible and give it, allow us to make scenes that were not just level gameplay and covered all the kinds of things that we have in the game. And so it's divided into these tabs. There's 4 tabs here because the game has 4 acts. That's just because it gets unwieldy to view it all at once. But it's really nice for things like we can just drag like a dialogue scene around and just move it to where it'll appear in the game. So this is the kind of sequence of things in the game will happen in this order.
Are you serious? I didn't realize it was the actual sequence. I thought it was just a way to look at your scenes, basically. But
it's also how we build it. So we can add. Oh, I don't want to add a new act actually, because that would be pretty major. But I can add a new scene, and then you just choose what type of scene you're adding.
Dude, this is so interesting. I have never seen something like this before.
Yeah, we don't really know.
Is this normal? Do you think this is a standard in the game industry?
I mean, you've probably talked to more developers about that process than I have.
I have never seen that before. But there is something to be said about, obviously, persistent game objects from scene to scene, and going from scene to scene, and ordering scenes, and triggering new scenes. It's like a spider web. And it's very messy and very complicated. Yeah. There's no Unity solution that's built in currently that helps you create that sort of hierarchy or path from scene to scene to scene. So I think it's brilliant. I wonder if there's a tool though that's in the Unity Asset Store that allows you to do that. I don't know.
Yeah, so to add a new scene, add a new stage, you can just click here and choose the type. I can make a new dialogue scene or title card. Perks are like when you actually spend your upgrade points, and we can put those wherever we like. And if it's a gameplay scene, then when I add it, I've got to edit it. I click override here to choose the scene, and this is a list of all our scenes in the game. Dialogue scenes are obviously for like cutscenes. We're talking. Gameplay scenes are backgrounds. And I can just choose whatever scene I like. So this means you could also load, a level into the wrong scene. Like any level in the game could appear in any tile set. And I'll show you in a minute, like how our level editor kind of fills the level with art, because that's all automated as well.
Yeah.
And then that would be a new scene, and it'll show an error for a second because it doesn't update very promptly. But I can then put that wherever I like and move the campaign around. So reordering things is really nice. This is really good for perks, because perks are where you get the upgrades, and there is no strict hard and fast rule for when those happen in the game. We just decide when it's time to give you some upgrades. And we've had to tweak that a lot, especially as we add new characters, because the structure of the game is you start with 2 wizards and then eventually you get 5. But we add those one at a time, and all that time, those first 2 keep leveling up. So we had a problem at one point where those first two were so powerful by the end of the game that they were just absurdly good. So we had to figure out how to like balance those.
Yeah. Well, that's so funny. I was just about to mention the word balance, because one of the best ways that I found to balance my game is to have everything in scriptable objects. It's really hard to balance a game when you have to go into the scene and dig around and find like there's too much ammo in this crate, or this enemy and this prefab I need to adjust their health. So I'm going to go into the actual enemy prefab and adjust the health or adjust their attack power.
Yeah.
So it's so much easier to have it all in one game, like manager effectively, and do the balancing in the manager.
And again, this is all built by a programmer, John Winder, and it's really smart. It's stuff I would never build if I didn't have a programmer, because on our first game, I did all the programming myself, and it was very much like anything like this would just be like, oh, that would be nice to have, but I can't build it.
Yeah. You know what's really striking about this project, Tom, is this might sound offensive. This is like neurotic. How clean this is. I'm looking at the syntax of everything. The only thing that strikes me as like outside of your boundaries is that folder called Tom's Experiments. But everything else has like really strict like syntax and naming conventions. I am like, and even like your scenes, the way your scenes were named, the conventions are very precise. Can you talk a little bit about that? Are you in charge of that? Are you responsible for that sort of?
I'd say that's a team effort. I did sometimes do like a sort of organizational overhaul if it was bothering me about where things were and difficulty. It's nice to hear that, because to us by the end of the project, it feels like a nightmare.
Yeah, it like, always does. It's a house of cards. You know, even if you've got like divine game dev abilities, it's always going to feel like a house of cards, you know, but look at that. Wow. The naming conventions are so impressive. I'm just so kind of jealous of your ability to keep things clean, because I just inevitably can't. At one point, it just kind of goes to hell for me in my projects, but this is awesome. Right. Let me ask you a question. So your forte as a game designer, or I would say a game developer, is game design, right? That's your big thing, is design. Yeah. Okay. You just won an award at IGF, by the way. What was that? Excellence in Design? Was that it?
Yep.
Okay. So question, because dude, I'm not a game designer. So I'm like a story guy. I'm an atmosphere guy. I'm an art guy. Like and music. Like that's my thing. And in a way, I kind of approach making games like I do, like making a film, which is not the most profitable way to do things, but that's just my skill sets. You know, that's my talent. My question to you is, as somebody who is not a skilled game designer, my question to you is this level of organization crucial to a game with such intricate design?
I don't know if it's crucial. We haven't made a game like this before. Like, this is our first game was 3 hours long and all story driven and kind of linear. Our second game was completely procedural and kind of as long as you want it to be, but maybe 20 to 100 hours, depending on sort of how much you rinse it. Wow. And this one is like 15 hours long and it's a story-driven campaign. And that was a real learning experience, because I thought, well, we've done this before. We've done a story-driven campaign. We know how to just put things one after the other and decide what the player's experience is going to be to a large extent. But we'd never made one 15 hours long before. So that's kind of why it's in these 4 acts. Like, each of these acts is about what the size of our first game, Gunpoint. And once you've made that much game, you kind of have to reinvent it for the next bit. So that's when organization becomes quite critical, and just managing the players' power level over the course of a long campaign like this. You know, we're not a true RPG. You're not earning experience by doing extra side quests or anything. We are kind of a puzzle game at times. It's a kind of puzzle tactics game. So there are times in the campaign where we need to make sure you can do this. Like, the player has to be able to do this, otherwise they're just stuck. They can't do anything else. Yeah. The game would just end. So we had to be very careful about knowing what the player's abilities were.
Cool. Let's go ahead and I want to click. Can we click a play stage button? Like, I kind of want to see what the art looks like in a scene. Is that possible?
Yeah, for sure. Let me do the first one in the Rushwater Police Department. This is kind of when the game starts to get going. Is that there's a prologue intro mission that's very on rails, and then this is still tutorially. We're introducing a new wizard, but at the same time, we've got to. Oh, sorry, because I've changed the
I know.
stage list. I added like a dummy stage.
Oh man, dude!
I was demonstrating that you could move it anywhere, and now I can't remember where I put it.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking at the Unity version. We're in 2019, so it's almost like we're in a little time capsule here, trying to open up a project from effectively 2019.
Yeah, I haven't fired it up from the editor in quite some time. This is not sort of like the game can't run. It's like a warning because we needed to delineate kind of, this is the gameplay mission, but actually everything that comes before that mission, the dialogue before it and the location card before it are kind of part of it. Mm-hmm. And when you go back and replay missions, we need to know like where do we start you from and when have you finished. So we have a system for that, and I screwed it up by adding the extra mission in there. So let's see if this works now. Yeah, so this is in game. We're in a gameplay stage now, but there's a little script file to tell it to play some dialogue at the start.
Mm-hmm. Well, once this dialogue is up, if you don't mind, let's open up in scene view and if we can look around this scene and see it, and compare it to the game view. I love seeing stuff like that.
Yeah. How do I get it to actually look at the scene we're in?
I don't know. That's a good question.
Let's see.
Okay, good.
So
it's just wild to me how, and I hope you don't take this the wrong way, because I said the same thing to the creator of Inscription, how unimpressive a scene looks in scene view,
Yeah, this is, I haven't really looked at this much, especially this scene. So this is a real credit to our artist, John Roberts, who did all of the art. But especially you can see how much the post-processing is doing here.
Exactly, yeah.
I was going to try and zoom in, but I can't zoom in during a dialogue scene.
So we've got particle emitters, we've got 3D models that, to me, they don't look like assets. I mean, are they custom?
Do you mean, did we make them models?
Yeah.
It's all our own stuff.
So would you say that this project as a whole is pretty much fully custom? There's no assets being used?
We do use some assets. I can probably just see in the project, actually. I remember for like cloth physics, we use a plugin. Mm-hmm. For some ropes and cables, we use a plugin for that. And we also have a lot of like behind the scenes, like integration with things like Trello for like bug reporting.
Sure.
We use something called FlatKit, which is part of our rendering style, which I believe is a plugin, and MK Glowfree is like a post-processing suite. Sure. John would know more about exactly what we've used, so that might be an incomplete list. But yeah, we did definitely use some third-party stuff. These
shaders that give this toon shading, you're saying that's a FlatKit shader.
Yeah, I think that's something that John sort of took a baseline and then customized from there. Because it is quite a specific art style, especially like John and I happen to agree on rendering faces in the sense that we like it a bit stylized, like to just sort of suggest we just have the eyes and no other facial features. Because as soon as you do other facial features, the character has an expression. And quite a specific expression, and then 90% of the time that's the wrong expression for what's going on. Whereas if you leave it blank, I think the player can kind of fill it in.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot that you can get away with as well with these isometric games, right? You don't have to show their faces, and you don't have to show close-ups of most things, right? So helps to have that isometric camera. Oh, cool! I love that. Oh wow, the backgrounds are 3D.
Yeah, so when I'm assigning a scene file to a level, this is the scene file really, is all this backdrop stuff.
I see. Can you give me the thought process of why you wouldn't just use a flat, sprite, like take a screenshot of it and just put it underneath?
Well, the player can move the camera in game, so you have
that's why. Okay,
like this.
Gotcha.
So we could have done completely, blank backgrounds, just sort of a kind of abstract thing. But it took us a while to kind of decide on the exact level of fidelity and convincing us, because obviously that would be the abstract end of the spectrum. The more real end of the spectrum would be to draw this building under you, like the lower floors, we just don't draw them. And these other rooms that you're going to go to, we played around a bit with how much of those we show. We want to give you a sense of the building, the layout, that you are going in this direction. But at the same time, if there's detail in there, then that's distracting. And I especially wanted to make sure the player knows you don't have to worry about anything that's not this room, The next room will be a little bit bigger than this, and actually not that much bigger. But let me actually stick up ahead a bit and get a more representative level.
But this is linear, right?
Yeah.
It's
you don't choose what level to do.
Okay. And no procedural generation either.
No, we toyed around with that for a while. Like we built a sort of prototype procedural generator, but it was going to be a lot of work to make it reliably fun, and we didn't really need it. Like actually, part of the reason we didn't do it is we brought on a level designer, Steve Lee, to help out with level design, and so he did a chunk of the campaign, but especially he did all of the optional extra missions. And having those be hand designed is, it was a lot better than doing proc gen stuff. And another reason for not to do proc gen is that this game, we're quite careful about ensuring you have a good story reason to be, breaking into buildings and taking out the people inside, because this is a pretty hostile action you're doing. We wanted to make sure that it's always against a powerful opponent who is oppressing somebody.
Yeah, it's justified.
Yeah, and so proc gen doesn't really, it solves a problem that we're not going to have, which is we're not going to want you to do a ton of gameplay without any story, because all of that is difficult to justify. That's why the optional missions we do have, they don't have story attached to them, but they also technically take place in a dream. It's kind of like a wizard hallucination dream where you sort of like, it's to do with Zan's powers. It's a total fudge, and we kind of make fun of it in the game, but it enables us to just have a ton of missions without having to write story for each one of them.
Exactly.
The way we make levels is not in Unity itself, but in our own level editor. And this is total overkill by our artist, John. He made his own custom tile set just for the level editor. So it kind of looks like a sort of, a VR room or... very, very nice and clear. It shows the orientation of each thing. So
wait, this is real time. Like how did you get to this?
I just hit L. I'm in development mode here, but you can.
That is so impressive! Wow.
This level editor is in the game, so players can mess around with it. And when you want to edit the room, you can just I can add some extra cover here, like this, and then jump straight back into the game, and the art will just sort of figure it all out.
That is amazing, Tom.
So it's super cluttery.
Wow.
And making new geometry is pretty easy too. You can just, if this level should be bigger, we just add floor. We don't have to add the walls, because at a certain point it's just obvious where the walls should go. Like obviously you want walls separating any bit of the outside with the inside. I can add some windows along here. Could add some more enemies if I remember where to find everything, because it's been a long time since I made a level.
Now, do you have to use the level editor? Does the team have to use it?
Yeah, we use this for everything. We for our first game, Gunpoint, I built all the levels inside Game Maker, which is what I was using for that game. And then at the end, I didn't know if I was going to have a level editor. So I didn't build it first in case we didn't have time. And at the end, we did have time, so I built the level editor at the end. And after I'd made it, I was like, this is so much nicer to use than what I've been doing for 3 years. So I'm like, next time I'm building a level editor at the start, and then I get to use it.
Would you recommend someone like me, like I like making like story-driven first-person shooter games, kind of like BioShock type games. Would you recommend a level editor for those kind of games?
Yeah, I mean, I've never built those kinds of levels. Well, I guess I did in my modding days in school, where we messed around a little bit with making Quake levels and things. But it's been so long that I don't know what modern FPS level design is like. With our game, it's so the bones are so simple. Like we wanted it to be big and chunky, and there's no awkwardly shaped objects. Everything just takes up a full square meter or nothing. Yeah. So the building of the logic is very simple. And I do remember seeing a video about BioShock that talked about how much of a pain in the ass it was in that game, where they'd built and arted a level, and then they decided for gameplay reasons the flow needed to change, and you got to just move this whole change this whole corridor, and all of the art and clutter you've added has to be basically deleted and then recreated after you do it.
We went through that process, dude. I think we went through 3 different level iterations for 12 different levels.
Oof.
So that's more than 30 times a level was built. And what was crazy is me and my team member Felipe, we have this problem. We're very visual people. So we have to see a level set dressed to know if it's working. And that is such a pain because like we would try in gray box and we just couldn't fully realize the level. And even some like game design stuff, we didn't even know if the game design was good with just gray boxing. We'd have to set dress it to realize if it was actually fun. And I knew that was a problem because it's such an expensive way to make games. So I'm curious with this, is your mentality that gray boxing and just very simple forms should be enough for you to realize whether the game is actually fun?
Yeah, I mean, we never play a level in this form. We had at least some kind of quality art tile set from the start. Sometimes it wasn't the one that we'd be using eventually for this mission, but we were always playing with like shipping quality assets. John is incredible at everything he makes is ready to ship. Basically, we never have anything kind of rough and ready. We definitely have times when like we don't have all the elements that we want to put into the final game, but everything he makes looks great from the start. So, what I was trying to show here is that you can switch these levels between tile sets pretty simply. So I'll actually put this back in the police tile set just so you can see the normal version of this level. So this is it normally. And then if it's crashed. Okay, I can just get past that. And then, I was just messing around with the black site tile set, black site ops. I have to change the mission, the scene as well. So although you can set the scene in the stage editor, you can also do it from within the level editor, and it just has to kind of reload. But then you've got the same level in a different tile set. And it's crazy how different it feels, Oh,
it changes everything. The background's changed.
It feels more spacious, this level, even though it's the same geometrically. Just the kind of light and airy, deserty feel. You can see the background scene has all these sandbags and military stuff. This is a kind of military installation. But I can also take us to, let's do Kalan. Kalan Streets probably won't work too well because that's designed specifically for an outdoor environment, which is trickier you have to bear that in mind when you design the level. But for every other tile set in the game, every tile set works basically. So now we're going to go to Kalan with the chapel, who are a kind of religious institution.
Whoa, cool.
So again, this is gameplay wise the exact same level, but it just looks and feels completely different.
Man. Well, dude, thank you so much for hanging out. This was a lot of fun. I learned a ton. Hey, what do you want in the description of this podcast? Anything? Any link?
Actually pointing people to like our Steam profile page and maybe our mailing list. I mentioned that's where we get testers from. So if folks want to test our next thing, that's a good place to go.
Will do. If you want to test Tom's next game, the link is in the description. Thank you so much, man. That was a lot of fun.
Thanks a lot.
Yep. Cheers. Also, hey, if you're looking to streamline your development workflow, don't forget to check out Bezi and their new feature, Agent Mode, and how I used it to fix 4 problems in my game, Brave Boy. It makes it very easy to create and modify code directly in your projects at your approval and provides tailored suggestions specifically to your project. It's completely free to get started, and if you like it, you can get 50% off your first month of Pro by clicking the link in the description.